Hey guys, Dakota here, and today I'm here with Mircea. How are you doing?
Good, good. Getting ready
No,
for Vienna.
yeah, I'm pumped for that, man. So, how far is Vienna for you? I guess we'll get into that first.
It's about an 8 hour drive,
Ooh,
more or less, depending on traffic, but yeah, about 8 hours away.
nice. So you're
Two
gonna
countries
drive
in eight
there?
hours away.
Yeah, yeah. So you're
That's
gonna be
fun.
driving there?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I
No,
enjoy a good road trip.
yeah, no, that's awesome. But yeah, I guess for people who are watching who might not know, you were a sports performance coach, among other things. I always like to let people just explain it because I feel like you can explain what you do better than I do. So just give everyone kind of a little insight on what you do.
Absolutely. Well, the simplest way to explain it is I take good athletes and make them better. I take great athletes and make them exceptional. I do whatever it takes to enhance their performance to new levels. And that could mean different things for different sports, different types of athletes. We work on what is your weak point and how can we make that, well, maybe not your strength, but at least make it not so much as a weak point as it is right now.
Yeah.
And sometimes that is cardiovascular, sometimes that is just body weight, force production. Depends entirely on the sport. Fitness is not just one thing. Fitness is very tightly related to your sport, and everybody has their own quirks and deficiencies and strengths and weaknesses.
No, that's awesome. And so, do you do any sport? Like, if someone, like, obviously arm wrestling is quite niche, and I know you're involved in that, but is there, like, I feel like you probably just want to push the boundaries almost anywhere. So, any sport that people present you with, you probably, it's like a different problem to solve in a sense, hey?
Yeah, absolutely. I view everything as an equation or a problem that I need to solve. I've worked with athletes in, oh God, I mean, pretty much every sport you can think of, from arm wrestling to bodybuilding, strongman, powerlifting, swimming, Olympic weightlifting, rugby, football, soccer. Yeah,
Wow.
there were some niche ones like like table tennis and darts and all sorts of like weird quirky sports. But yeah, I've worked with a lot of different sports and recently a lot of combat sports, MMA, kickboxing, and BJJ, which are a whole new breed of sports with very interesting aspects. They're so multifaceted and so many moving parts.
Wow, that's awesome. And I mean, to follow up with that, I guess I gotta ask, what sparked your passion for that, or what made you, at whatever age you decided to say, this is something I'm really interested in doing and helping the athletes become better or exceptional wherever they may be?
Honestly, it started from a point of just wanting to be better myself. I just wanted to be better. I just wanted to be a better, be bigger, stronger, faster, that kind of like American dream. Everybody
Yeah.
wants that. So that was my goal. And then, the opportunity was presented to me like, hey, do you want to do this for other people? And I was like, hell yeah. That's awesome. So, started slow and, slowly built up, learned a lot along the way. This is kind of something you don't learn. You can't take a course for this. You can't learn this in in college or at university. It's a lot of things, and you have to be able to discern from good from bad information, learn on your own, and also find good people to learn from, good mentors, if you will.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And like you said, it's such a specialized aspect that you learn. Because even I can say, like, so I went to school here in Canada to be a pharmacy technician. So I'm a pharmacy technician. But, as we talk about, supplements, compounds, and things like that, there are things that a school system will teach you and they don't really show you maybe a sports performance aspect on those side of things. So like you said, you need to find information elsewhere or mentors who already know this information and really kind of take what you will. And a lot of it, I mean, at the point we're at kind of in the world, like at one point it was such trial and error, you know what I mean? People would try things, it would either fail or it would work. I think we're quite lucky, and especially where you were, you're learning things, but you're learning things from people who've probably already trialed and errored, and so it's in a much better spot. But kind of diving back into the whole just sports performance aspect as a whole. So when you take a look, let's say at just any athlete, when you take a look at them, what are kind of, do you break it down in your head, or you said you kind of look at it as an equation? How do you look at that as a whole and kind of decide where to go from there?
Oh, that's a very good question. I think everything starts from what is your sport, what is your goal, because that's going to be the main factor. From there on, we look at things like blood work, your basic health markers, and also certain markers that could be, I don't really like this word, but let's say optimized to improve your performance. You know, you might be an endurance athlete that is running dangerously low on red blood cell count because aerobic fitness is highly demanding on the red blood cell side of things, so the hematology aspect. That's something that can always be improved in endurance athletes. For example, so looking at the athlete, looking at the sport, looking at his blood work, and then, okay, what are you missing? Because sometimes you can see a bodybuilder missing aerobic fitness, and you'll have to do some aerobic work with him because he's just not able to recover between sessions, or he's not able to perform his sports, which is just posing in his underwear on stage,
Yeah.
because he's out of breath. He's just so deconditioned. He doesn't have to be a marathon runner, but he has to be able to stand on stage in front of really hot lights and pose for a couple of minutes. So it's kind of like, okay, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the demands of your sport? What is your current level? Where you need to go? And also, you know, outside of blood work and basic health parameters, what is your history? What have you been doing up to this point? Because then we kind of already have a good idea of what works, what doesn't work. Have you exploited all avenues? Is it kind of like one of those situations where you just hit a brick wall, or like you're just missing the forest because of the trees?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I really like the outlook on that, because I think you can use that outlook not only for what you're doing, but you can really take that for, you know, anything in life, really. Like, what do you want to achieve? And like, what is your goal? And I think, like you said, one of the main things when you're kind of helping people out, it's like, what am I helping you out doing? What do you want to do? You know what I mean? If someone wants to be the best arm wrestler in the world, it's very much different than if someone wants to be the best swimmer in the world. So I think that's great. I got to ask you, because you said this, why don't you like the word optimize? What don't you like about it?
Oh, I play around with this kind of just like a bit of, you know, tongue in cheek. Optimization is a pipe dream. There is no optimal scenario. You can't have optimality. Yeah. You can, you know, you can strive to achieve it. It's just like perfection. You strive to be perfect, but you'll never be perfect. It's kind of almost like that. What I would say is, you know, you can say maximize, but maximization is when you achieve a goal at any cost. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, I don't care if I die 10 seconds after I reach the finish line. I just need to reach the finish line. That would be maximization to its extremes.
Yeah.
But you know, optimization is kind of like a utopic environment. Everything is perfect, and that's not usually the case. At least not with the clients that I work. And, you know, some people that I work with are high level, and they still don't have optimal scenarios because, you know, life happens, stress happens. There's traffic. There's you know, fights with your spouse, you know, with your partners, with, you know, business partners, things like that. There's just little things that get in the way. So optimality is something that you should strive to achieve, but I don't think anybody actually achieved it. So it's kind of like, you know, it's people like, well, they want to optimize everything. Like, yeah, there's no optimization. You could try to get the best, you know, return on investment. I think that's as close to optimal as you can get.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And it's like you said, optimization is it's something you can dream and strive for. But at the end of the day, it's like you're always chasing it. You know what I mean? It's almost like money. Like you can set a goal for money, but once you get there, you're gonna want more money. It's like optimization. You know what I mean? You want to be
Yep.
so optimal. People are like, "Oh, I would love it if I, had a gym in my house." But then once they get a gym in their house, they're like, "Oh, well now I need this to be more optimal." Whereas a return on investment, you put it that way, what once you get that gym, you're getting that return. You can kind of look at it differently. Well, while we're on this topic, I've kind of seen you involved in two different, I don't want to say businesses because I don't know, but I know you have your Built for Mayhem. And then when I was kind of going back to your Instagram to find some questions to ask you, I saw Evil Genius Sports Performance. Can you kind of give a breakdown on maybe what those are and the differences or anything like that?
Yeah, basically that is just like you said. You scroll down to my Instagram, and it's a timeline. It's literally that my initial formative years were spent as part of Team Evil Genius Sports Performance. That was my formative years. That was where I've mentored under the people in that crowd, and I've been honestly, I was the first quote team member at the
Okay.
beginning. There was not much of a team. I was the first one, and then the team grew exponentially. And I was kind of like the right hand man in that team. It was quite an experience. Lots of good knowledge. Learned a lot of things while I was part of it. And yeah, just last year we had a parting of ways. I've decided based on a few factors to go my own route. Try to focus more on a few other things that
Okay.
I wanted to be heavily involved in,
Hmm.
and just my views were kind of like a bit separating from what the team views were, so to say. And out of that, the genesis of Project Mayhem, at Built for Mayhem on Instagram, which is uh, the brand. It is I'm now affiliated, associated with. I co-founded the brand, and
Oh,
I'm doing my damnedest to grow the brand. So
yeah.
kind of like, yeah, that is where I'm at right now. It is basically sports performance coaching and education, heavily focused on not just because most people when they hear this they think about, oh, we're just coaching bodybuilders, just trying to get people to have bigger arms and six packs. No, 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 no. We deal with athletes. We deal with athletes a lot. Yes, we deal with bodybuilders. Yes, we deal with cool gen pop, if you will, or
Yeah.
recreational lifters or trainees. But we also deal with athletes. We deal with a lot of athletes that are not even remotely physique oriented when it comes to their goals. CrossFit athletes, power lifters, even things that don't have to do necessarily directly with fitness, but like physique sports are interesting, but sometimes you have, let's say, people that are actors or stuntmen.
Mhm.
They have to have a certain physique, but they also have to have a certain performance. And then it's kind of like, well, what are we working with there? Like, let's say a stuntman. They need flexibility. They need aerobic fitness. They need resilience because they literally get hit by trucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also like most stuntmen like do some variation at the very least of martial arts, because you don't need a stuntman just to sit there and look pretty. You need one
Yeah.
to do kung fu kicks and stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's interesting, and I find it cool because when I sit here and talk to you, there are people who maybe like you can go to your average gym and someone can say like, oh, I'm a sports performance coach, and what they're doing is they're helping the maybe the old lady who showed up for personal training stretch a little bit and lift some weights, or maybe there's a guy who's helping certain lifts. But I think you take a real holistic approach on everything, and you want to sit someone down, you take them in and you say, okay, what's going on in your life, what have you tried, how can we make you better in every single aspect. But I feel along with that there probably comes a lot of challenges, because from your perspective, you might look at a client and say, oh, if you just did this, this, and this, you would be where you need to be. But a lot of it is probably getting that client to do those things or to be willing, you know what I mean? Because, I'm sure as the coach, you have to have hard talks with people sometimes. Probably you have to be like, like, this is negatively affecting you, but it could be something that they enjoy. So I guess in so many words, I'm getting to a question, like, when you deal with that adversity with someone, what are ways that you kind of attack that, or how would you kind of, again, I don't want to say optimize, but how would you help them get through that?
Oh, well, that is a good question, and I'm still looking for the optimal answer to
Yeah.
that. It's a lot of that. That is literally sports psychology, which I think is a field that isn't even scratching the surface yet when it comes to what it is that they're teaching in schools about sports psychology. I think when it comes to clients, sometimes it's as simple as, kind of like the dangling the carrot in front of them, like, hey, keep, look at this, focus on your goal. Don't look at, the 2 hours of cardio you're doing. Don't look at the diet restrictions. Just look at the goal. Look at, you being lean or whatever. But a lot of the times when I deal with clients, this is very true for athletes, especially combat sports athletes. They try to do too much, and they actually have to pull them back.
Okay.
And it's hard. Sometimes it's even harder to pull somebody back than it is to motivate them, because they're literally doing everything they can and more to achieve their goals. So for them to not do something, they feel lazy. They feel that they're not doing their best. They feel like, I'm falling behind. Everybody else is training 10 hours a day. I need to train 12 hours a day, not 6. So with them, it's kind of like I need to explain to them, look, your performance is going to go down. Nobody cares how much time you're spending in the gym. Nobody will check on you. You're not getting a trophy for that. The only trophy you're getting is if you knock that guy out in the ring in 5 weeks. You're not going to get a trophy for how hard you train. Nobody gets a trophy for that. Not even bodybuilders. They don't get a trophy for how hard they train. They get a trophy for how well they look on stage on that one day. That's it. Not that morning, not that evening, that 20 minutes while they're on stage, cumulative 20 minutes. So I have to have that hard talk and tell them, I don't care how hard you train. I don't care how much time you spend in the gym. I just care about you getting the results. And they have to understand that some people respond better to kind of like hard ass negative type of interaction. Where like, look, you will do this. If we need to collaborate, you need to understand that this is counterproductive and you need to stop. Other people, require a bit more of a gentle touch and like, okay, I understand, but we need to go. So it depends on client to client, and most of the times it's just reaffirming their goals. What is your goal? Is your goal to train hard, or is your goal to win? And sometimes it's getting their mind off of whatever they have, because usually it comes from a place of, if they train too hard, it's, I'm not doing enough. So take their mind off of that. If they're lazy and not doing that, it's like, okay, do you understand that you won't reach your goal unless you put in the work?
Yeah.
And sometimes people are like, yeah, I understand, but I just don't want to do that. And, so that's one of those cases where like, okay, are you okay with lowering your expectations? Sometimes it's like, yeah, actually, I don't want to be that lean or that big or that fast, or I don't want to win. It's just, I just want to, be bigger, faster, stronger for, to be able to pick up my kids while, on the weekend in the park. Something. Depends.
Yeah, no, I like what you said there, just because, like, goal revision is something that probably, if they're not willing to, if someone presents you a goal and you lay out what they need for that goal and they're not willing to do those things, well, then you're probably like, well, then we need to revise your goal, because I'm giving you the steps that you need to take, and it's a point of, do you want to take them now? And I'm sure, because like you said, you're looking at all the limits that are there, and you're wanting to push them. And I'm sure there comes an aspect for people when they're like, oh, I thought I wanted to push those limits, but maybe now I actually don't, when it comes tooth and nail. So that is fair. I have a quote I want to give you, and I want you to kind of tell me what you think on it. Just because, so I feel like you deal with athletes who, in a lot of sense, are kind of the by any means necessary kind of people, or they're like, I want to do what I have to. So this quote, I forget where I found it. I'll have to credit the person who said it if I can remember, but they talk about every kind of goal is almost like an auction. Do you like, so I'll use arm wrestling for example, just because I can correlate with that. So let's just say number one in the world. Let's go to the biggest extreme of arm wrestling. Every single person who wants that goal is in this auction per se, and they're bidding to get to that goal. You know what I mean? And there's gonna be somebody who is gonna pay way too high of a price to achieve that goal. But because they're willing to pay that price, it doesn't really become too high of a price anymore because they're setting the price. And so I guess the question I want to follow up with this is, you probably see these people who, let's say some guy on the street would say being number one in arm wrestling is only worth $50. But there's some guy who's put his entire life into arm wrestling who wants nothing more than to be number one in the world, and they're probably willing to pay, hundreds of thousands of dollars. When you see those athletes who are willing to pay those hundreds of thousands of dollars, do you like how does it make you how does it make you feel is kind of where I'm getting at, because you see all these people who are just willing to do all of these things. Is it a motivating thing to see?
Oh, absolutely. That drives me more than anything. Like I get heated. Like every time I get into like an arm wrestling tournament and I have, quote, skin in the game. I have guys competing. I'm like there. I'm literally, feeling what they feel. And of course, it's all them. They're doing the work. They're suffering there. But I need to empathize with my athletes in order to give them the best I can when it comes to my coaching. Yeah. And I love it when I see people have that level of conviction, that level of determination. Like, I will do whatever it takes to win. Like, and sometimes, a lot of people say that. Not a lot of people actually mean it.
Yeah.
But you kind of like see it in their eyes. There's like kind of like that little twitch, that twinkle in their eyes, like, yeah, I'm gonna do it. I'll do whatever it takes. Like when you see that, it's like, ooh, this guy's really serious. I like that.
That guy will pay the hundreds of thousands of dollars. You know what I mean? At
Yes.
the auction, yes.
Oh hell yeah! That's I like that. And here's kind of like the harsh reality. There are people who are willing to pay the price, but the question is, do they have a shot? Because there's some people who are just like, yeah, I'll do whatever it takes, and that might be, literally everything they've got, but it just might not be nearly enough. And sometimes I usually never tell people like, look, you kind of like, okay, it's whatever. You'll never get there, so whatever. Don't get your hopes up. It's like, if you want to be a bodybuilder, but you're kind of like, not that young anymore, not that lean anymore, not the best genetics. Like okay, cool. We can work with what you've got and see where we end up. But if you tell me like, I want to be Mr. Olympia, I mean, like, yeah, that's not gonna happen. Like,
yeah.
And sometimes you have to be real with your clients or your athletes and tell them like, look, I understand you're willing to pay the price, but you won't get there, or the chances are minimal, and it's just not worth it. Like, you have so many other things going for you. You could be you can look great. You can have a good performance. You can or if we're talking about arm wrestling, you can go to tournaments, you can win some, you can lose some, you can have a lot of fun, you can get better at arm wrestling, but you'll never beat Levon. Like, it's like you have zero chances of that. But it's not worth you investing everything. You have a good job, a family, career, everything going for you. Why throw all that away for a dream that will never come true?
Yeah.
If you're somebody who's got a legitimate chance, then it's kind of like, okay, let's see that you're serious about this. If you're serious, like, okay, I'm not shy about some things, but I need to see that there is, a level of commitment and a level of discipline, because health needs to be in check always. Yeah. And, always need to be very mindful of not doing too much of certain things. There is too much of a good thing, and I see that excess a lot in every sport. Like, people try to do too much, from training to cardio to whatever supplements they want to take. There people say, like, oh, if one is good, 10 is better. Like, no, sometimes it's not.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's interesting. It's one thing, you see, I like having these talks with people like you, just because, I think of sports performance coaching and I think of things, but then you talk about these, like, I've never even thought about, some people, they may come to you with a goal, and it's legitimately just an unattainable goal. And I mean, that is completely fair, and that's another hard talk you have to have, telling someone, like, don't throw what you have away to go for this goal that's unattainable.
Yeah.
I guess another question that leads me with this is, so when you look at an athlete and what, if someone's like, I want to be the best at this or the best at that, and you kind of look and evaluate, is it pretty easy for you to tell, like, if you follow what I say, you can achieve this? Like, can you evaluate the goal pretty quickly? Or is that something that usually takes time to kind of figure out? Like, I know you have to figure out the commitment, but just, like, their structure, maybe you're looking at them, or is it a lot of it genetic based?
That's a very good question. If there are certain tells that make it kind of obvious, like, if you're an MMA fighter and you have a good record of knockouts, you have a good structure, a good frame, you're lean, you come from a very rough background, and your training is very chaotic, yet against all odds you're good. Like, yeah, you can go places with a bit of structure to your training, to your nutrition, to your actual preparation for a fight. Yeah, you can get places. You can get to the UFC. You can get to the top of the UFC. Mm-hmm. You can. I work with some athletes that are exactly that. Their training is chaotic. Their cardiovascular training was basically nothing. Everything that was weight training, they were just like, yeah, go to the gym and do what the bodybuilders do. It was like, their coaches were just like, yeah, just go to the gym. On top of all your training, just go to the gym and do what the bodybuilders do. Just like, random stuff. And right, like, what's your food look like? It's like, well, I eat 2 slices of toast with Nutella and 2 eggs for breakfast. And I'm like, dude, I eat that while thinking what I want to eat for breakfast. Like, you're probably 20 kilos heavier than me and leaner, and your energy expenditure in a day is probably what I do in a week. Like, that does not count as a snack. And when we're talking about these types of scenarios, like, yeah, there's so much room for improvement. You can get really far really fast. So there's kind of like a instant kind of like you can tell who can do what, but a lot of the times it takes a bit of time to analyze the athlete, especially if it's a sport where you don't know much about. Me, when I came into arm wrestling, I knew very little about arm wrestling, and I had to take like a deep dive into the sport and learn the history, the names, the techniques, everything. Like, I I started doing kind of like arm wrestling training in the gym just to feel the stress on my joints, on my musculature, on my structure, so I can understand, okay, I understand what these guys are like. Well, I can't understand. I can partially understand what these guys are going through. So now I can understand, okay, what is a potential weak point in their physiology, in their, soft tissue integrity, in their muscular structure. Why are they getting tendon tears? Why are they getting, issues with their backs? There's a lot of rotation and anti-rotation involved in arm wrestling. And I don't see people training that specific thing. So when you're at the table, there's a lot of trunk rotation. I don't see a lot of people training that. And if you think about it, trunk rotation, a lot of it comes from the hip. Yeah. So that movement is something that's far more relatable to boxing, kickboxing, combat sports than it is to just going to the gym and lifting like a bodybuilder or a powerlifter. And people don't think about things like that.
Yeah, well, that's actually funny you said that, because so my dad is a big guy. Like, he's like 280, 300 pounds. And when he pulls super heavies around here, he is faster than everybody. And everyone just doesn't understand why. And I always tell people, so my dad growing up, he boxed for like 15 to 20 years. And he could just throw hooks like crazy. And when I watch my dad set up at the arm wrestling table, he will set up exactly like he's throwing a right hook. And when they say go, he literally just does the hooking motion, and people don't understand it. And I'm like, I'm telling you guys, he found a way to translate something that he was fast at and bring it to the table. And to kind of sidetrack a little bit into arm wrestling talk, I do agree with what you say, because I like to take a step back and think. And one thing I'll do just to kind of warm up the hips and get everything going is I'll just take a band and I'll hold it directly out in front of me, and I just rotate my entire body, but I keep my feet planted in the ground. And I've been doing that lots of reps for quite a while now. And I just notice it helps on the table just get everything warm. And some people just think, oh, arm wrestling. But in reality, you need to find out how to transfer, that muscle in your big toe. How can you transfer that pressure into your fingertips? And it's quite interesting. Yeah, okay, I had a fun little thing I wanted to do with you. So let's say a 20-year-old comes up to you, or we'll say 23, because that's like the age of the States. I always think 18 because I'm in Canada. But they say, Mircea, I want to be the best arm wrestler in the world. They have, all right genetics. They're nothing exceptional, but there's nowhere you're like they're lacking. Let's say they're pretty average. Is it possible, like, if you do everything fundamentally correct, is it possible for the average person to do that in arm wrestling? Or maybe we could even say arm wrestling or MMA, or are there just some gifts that are required, in a sense, when you look at kind of the pool that you see for all these people? Because I think this is just a fun conversation to have, because there's those types of people in the world that are like, anyone can do anything, put your mind to it. And I love that energy, and I think it's great, and I think that a lot of people can do a lot of things. But I think there's those realists out there too who are like, no, you need this, you need that, you need that. And just kind of, we don't have to go too in depth on this, but I just kind of wanted your thoughts on that.
That is a phenomenal question. I do agree with you. You can become really good, but the best in the world, they're always genetically gifted. Yes, they work hard. Yes, they're very strict with, training, nutrition, everything, but they're just genetically gifted. They're just built different. They just have a different, fiber, muscle fiber makeup, structure, joint integrity. Like, you can tell, like, Brian Shaw was just built to be a strongman. Like,
yeah,
I think he would naturally have been, if he did nothing, like literally nothing, and ate just poverty calories, he probably wouldn't have been less than 250 pounds.
Yeah.
Or maybe even closer to 300. Like, Brian Shaw was just built to be a strongman. There's no doubt about it. There is nothing in the world that could replicate Brian Shaw other than sheer genetics. So you kind of like see the best in the world do have a specific genetic makeup, and sometimes they just don't look like it. Some combat sports athletes. You look at Conor McGregor. Like, does he like if you looked at him, and say, like, this guy looks like a pro MMA fighter. Like, he just looks like a like a rowdy Irish dude. Okay, it's like okay, but you can see that the level that he can reach in such a short period of time, the amount of skill that he can retain, the physical traits, the mental toughness, and it's an amalgam of things. Sometimes it's how fast can you recover from training, how much pain can you take, how fast you are, how fast you can learn, how much you can learn, and sometimes it's just pure freaking luck. Honestly, there's a lot of fights that if you ask a fighter, they might try to sound very smart, but at the end of the day, if you pull him aside, like, you just got lucky, right? Like,
yeah.
But in sports like arm wrestling, sometimes, you might just get lucky. Your opponent might have a bicep tendon that's ready to snap, but that's a very you can't rely on that for a world title.
Yeah.
So I think you just have to be built for it, and the people that are built for it, they might be mediocre if they don't apply themselves, but if you put in enough effort and you have the genetic gifts, like, you can have a Lavon Saganishvili, you can have a Devin Larratt, you can have our good friend Matt Mask, who just look at his structure. It's just you can see that he has a freaky structure. Like, it lends itself to arm wrestling perfectly.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I think that's one thing you said is true, especially when you look at MMA. I think MMA is such a fun sport because I think it's one of the sports where the better person doesn't always win. You know what I mean? Like, all it takes is one slip up or one person making one proper prediction, and someone could win 99 out of 100 times, but that one off chance, it's crazy. But I'm sure, like, I want to go to the mental side because you talked about it. I'm sure, especially in MMA, that can be so devastating to somebody if they are that 99 out of 100 that should win, and then they get clipped with the punch, or it's as much sometimes as taking a step backwards. They roll their ankle, and now all of a sudden they're out of the fight. Mentally that's just tough. But my question with mental is, how much does mental toughness attribute to we're making this athlete that you need to have to be a very high level, I should say?
Regardless of genetics, mental toughness is a essential part in any sport. You need to be tough mentally to push through pain barriers, to push through certain limitations. There is no replacing that. That is also, you can't teach that. It is also a genetic thing, and sometimes you have to be mentally tough. You can see Devin. He plays with his opponents. He plays mind games. If you're not mentally tough, like, you've lost before the match even starts. He just got you beat mentally. Like, he'll learn your language just to fuck with you. Yeah. he's that kind of guy, and that is something that is very important. That mental kind of pressure, and you don't have to cave. Like, even when you get to because you said MMA, like, I had guys that lost because they had a shit ref and they called something stupid. It's like they didn't lose on something that they did wrong, and it's all that preparation, all that time wasted because something that was completely out of your hands was a bullshit call. Mm-hmm. And it happens in every sport. But even in MMA, newcomers are kind of the most susceptible to this. The first time you actually get hit in a ring, you're never prepared for that.
No.
no amount of training can ever make you prepared for that moment when you actually are in a ring, in a fight, and get punched in the snout. That is, and the more you do that, the the more it becomes just business as usual. And same thing in arm wrestling. First time you actually get on the table and you feel somebody's hand and they just flash pin you. It's like, where did that come from? So it's kind of like that first hit, that first exposure that most people need to quickly adapt to it, learn from it. Like, okay, next time I'm prepared. And it's not only that, it's also being exposed to the atmosphere, the crowd, the noise, the lights. I had bodybuilders walk on stage and they just started sweating bullets because they were like, oh shit, I did not expect those lights to be that hot. I was just literally sweating. Like, well,
Yeah.
first off, that is an error on my side. You had way more water than I expected, so you needed to dehydrate a bit more. And second off, like, that is something that we would have probably needed to practice a lot more of, posing under extreme heat conditions. Because, yeah, you need to practice it. There were practices in, I believe the NFL does that now. They introduce, like, during practice, like crowd noises through the speakers, or there's something that the Eastern Bloc, Soviet, did a lot. They had mental training where they literally had the entire gym screaming at you the wrong instructions, and you had to discern your coach's voice from 30 other freaking voices and
Wow.
make sure that you're listening to your coach, what he tells you to do, jab, jab, hook, instead of the other guy that says the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So there's so many things about, being prepared for the match day and being mentally tough. And some people actually did that during training. They just pressured you and pressured you and pressured you until they saw, will you break or will you come out the other side stronger?
Huh. Wow. That's just so interesting. I didn't know that about the Soviet. That's
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, the amount of training that's went on through time and just the techniques tried, if you could take it all and bottle it up, there would just be so much knowledge there. It's crazy. But um one thing I did want to talk about, and I want to talk about this just because there's a lot of people out there, whether they're new to sports or they're not new to sports, but obviously there is a side of supplementation. I don't want to go too in depth with you on this, but I want to talk because I know you could talk about this all day. You're so smart on this aspect, and I'm not even close to you, and I don't want to seem like a fool. But when you're looking at someone's blood work, you're taking a look at the sheet and everything. So you kind of evaluate what is where. And then is that when supplementation would come involved? Is when you're looking at how can I enhance something or make something better?
Yes, that is definitely one of the things. And sometimes the first step would be, okay, how do I not make this worse? So you might have, blood markers will definitely shift under certain supplements. The thing is, if somebody already has a certain marker that is kind of elevated or, out of range, whether up or down, how can I make this better or how can I make this not get any worse? Because there are certain side effects, secondary effects to
Yeah.
each supplement or compound that you take. But also, it's important to know blood work is one thing, and that will be almost pretty much the determining factor because health is number one.
Yeah.
But also, you need to take into consideration what the athlete needs. It's kind of like a needs analysis. What he needs, what are his strengths and weaknesses, and kind of like a SWOT, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, kind of like one of those analysis. If you're getting into like corporate lingo, you need to know what does he need to improve, and then pair that with the blood work, and then pair that with the vast toolbox of tools that you have available, and then you kind of like start to things like I just like literally see like like that meme with the whole like math equations just
Yeah.
floating around. It's like, ooh, I see this and that, and I think this would work in this combination. Just things like that. And that's how my brain works. Maybe some people do it differently, but I literally like to see, okay, this is your health. This is what we got to work with. This is you. This is your profile. This is who you are, where you're at, what you're doing, and this is what we need to improve. And then we kind of like start building from there.
Yeah. And the main takeaway I wanted people watching to get while you said that is that it's very complex. The reason I asked that is, and so and I'm sure you would say this too, but to anyone, just a Joe Blow who's like, oh, I'm going to hop on this or I'm going to hop on that, I want everyone to remember that there are people like Mircea who specialize in these things, and you can't just randomly hop on some things and expect to get, certain results. Like, there are certain things that obviously will do certain things, but just remember that it's very complex and that there are always, people to reach out and talk to. And to kind of lead into that question, if someone were looking at getting coaching from you or something along those lines, are there prerequisites? What is the best way to contact you? Things like that, because I think that's something we should definitely talk about.
Oh, absolutely. I like working with individuals that are, that are determined, that they want to achieve a goal.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really do the whole, like, I only work with these kinds of athletes, or no, I work with Gen Pop individuals, recreational athletes. I work with elite athletes too. I just like people that, are interested in being better. And the more determined they are, the more determined I am to work with them. And honestly, the best way to get a hold of me is, the Project Mayhem Instagram is @built4mayhem. And there's all sorts
I'll
of
link that as well in
here. There's like a email address, like message thing in there.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not that savvy with social media, but that is the best place to reach me. Yes.
Yeah, no, for sure. And then for people who might not know, what does a normal day look like for you? You know what I mean? What does a day look like?
Oh, well, my days are nothing but normal. Regardless where I am on the planet, I try to keep Eastern Standard Time. So my days usually start at my current local time here in Romania at like noonish, because I go to sleep at like 7 a.m. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a weird routine, but my daily routine, I just wake up, I down a bunch of water because I'm probably very dehydrated, and I get on the treadmill. I do my 30 minutes of cardio, or if it's a really busy day, I just go for a walk while answering emails and messages, followed by food, shower, work, things like that. More work, usually deal with clients, consults, check-ins, updating programs. At some point, I eat again.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much this. I, on some occasions, have the pleasure of being on podcasts with very talented hosts like yourself. And then I hit the gym and hit the hay. That's pretty much it.
Hey, no, that's perfect.
My regular
No.
life is boring, but when it becomes interesting is when I have to fly out to events, right now, or drive this time, which is fun,
Yeah.
to Vienna for East versus West. And after that, I drive back home, take a shower, and get on a plane for the Arnold Classic in Columbus, Ohio, which will be fun, really fun as well.
Yeah, no, and I bet you it's fun getting to kind of have these clients that you build that relationship with. And not only that, but you have such an awesome opportunity where you get to go and help them firsthand, talk to them, you know what I mean, sit down. I mean, it's really great to see. It's nice, and just, talking about arm wrestling, it's awesome to see people like you involved, just because it really tells me that we're taking this sport in the right direction, and just the level increase. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a firm believer that there, like you said, there's a lot of people who can make East versus West, make these promotions. But when you get to that cream of the crop where you're getting into the top 5, the top, people, their level is just starting to get so insane that, You know what I mean? It's exciting to see, and we do owe that to people like you, and also the athletes who are willing to put themselves, at that level. But one thing I wanted to say, and I really appreciate this about Built for Mayhem, because when I look at all of your kind of posts and everything, and guys, go check him out on Instagram. There's a lot of good information on there. You know what I mean? But you always talk about how hard work over everything. And I think that's so important. I think that's a really good thing to push on people. It doesn't matter what you're taking. It doesn't matter, what you're eating, all these things. If you're not showing up and putting in the work to achieve that specific goal that you want, and you're not giving it some thought and specializing, you're not going to get there, and especially without the hard work.
Absolutely. I think people underestimate the value of hard work. And sometimes it's just that they're looking for excuses. Sometimes they're just trying to outsmart hard work. But, honestly, the most perfect plan with piss poor execution will not stand a chance against a mediocre plan where you execute it with maximum amounts of effort. You put everything you've got into doing a mediocre plan, and you will get more results than this like perfectly planned thing, but you're just, for lack of better words, pussyfooting everything.
Yeah. Well, and like they say, do so much work on something that it would be unreasonable for you to be bad at it. And that's kind of my approach to arm wrestling. I'm on the arm wrestling table so much that if I sucked at it, it would be unreasonable because of the amount of work I put in. You know what I mean? And I think you can really take that with what you said. You can sit there and be like, oh, I'm planning out this training regiment. I've been planning it out for 3 weeks. But then there's some dude who's just, he's got a decent plan, but he goes and he puts in the work every single day, and that will always prevail.
Absolutely. Consistency is key.
Yeah. And so I got you for about 10 more minutes. Well, let's dive into East versus West particularly, So the first thing I want to ask is what got you involved initially in East versus West in arm wrestling? Did you stumble across it? Did someone maybe say, "Hey, come over here"? Or...
Honestly, it was literally a conversation that I had, and it was just like, "Oh, do you know much about arm wrestling?" I was like, I understand it. I like snowballed from there, and my first East versus West was the one in Orlando, Florida, 2 years ago.
When John pulled Leonidas?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes, it was who was it? It was Jerry Cadret versus Alex Credecha.
Yeah, Devin
versus
there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That was the one.
Mad Lars, right?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
okay.
It was a I was there and I was like, holy shit, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This is so freaking cool. And I was just like, yeah, I just kind of like fell in love with the sport. I was just like, yeah, I like this. I like the people. I like the atmosphere. I like the crowd. And, I really would like to help the athletes. And honestly, I found out that there was a lot of misinformation in arm wrestling or lack of information. And like in a lot of sports that don't have kind of like that high level exposure, like, like now bodybuilding has, or like strongman, they kind of like don't know what to do, and they kind of piece together bits and pieces that they get from other sports, and they're like, well, what are we going to do? Well, let's ask our good powerlifting friend or our strongman friend or our bodybuilding friend. And they kind of like start mimicking what they do, which is pretty much non-specific to arm wrestling. Like, you can't do the exact same thing that a bodybuilder does and excel at arm wrestling. Although we do have Leonidas who did compete in bodybuilding last year and is back on the table this year probably. So, yeah, you can do both, but there needs to be specific training and specific preparation for each endeavor. And yeah, it's that was a thing that I saw was missing a lot. And, people don't know what to categorize arm wrestling as. Like, what is it? Is it a strength sport? Is it what kind of sport is it? I would say yes, it could be a strength sport, but not really. I would say it's a more or less a combat sport. Because you are facing off against an opponent, and there is kind of like a combative, like yes, like if BJJ is two men rolling on the floor, arm wrestling is two men holding hands.
Yeah.
So it is in my opinion, it would be closer to a combat sport that has a very low cardiovascular need, a very low general fitness, let's say, requirement, and a more specific musculature requirement than let's say MMA or kickboxing or even boxing. But yes, I would probably categorize it as a combat sport.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. And the reason I actually think you're right is because this is how I think about it. But when I think of a strength sport, I think of like you have a number that you have to lift. Like when someone's doing something where they have to be stronger than that, 225 bench or whatever it may be. When you think of a combat sport, I don't have to lift a certain number, but I have to be better than the person I'm combating against. So, if they're pronating 90 pounds, I need to cup 100 pounds. I don't need to hit 100-pound cup to get that record. Whereas that's where I think it kind of separates, in my mind anyways. I'm sure everyone looks at it differently. But, so, it's Vienna. It's February 28th. It's coming really quick, actually. Like, I fly out with Matt. As of right now, we fly out tomorrow. When I actually might upload this today just because I've had a really fun talk. But anyways, regardless of all that, there's a lot of fun matches on there. I know you're maybe more invested in a few than others. But I'm going to talk about a couple, and I just want your arm wrestling fan opinion on them. So we'll start off with Devin Vitale on the left arm. How do you feel about that one?
I'm going to be honest. I think I feel confident in Devin. I know he's the underdog. I know it's going to be tough. I think it's a 60-40 for Devin. I'll just go with that. I think Devin has a chance of winning.
Yeah, no, and I think, it's funny because Devin's one of those guys where he can be recognized as an underdog, but there's enough people still saying I think he's going to win that he's the favorite. Or like, arm wrestling's not quite there yet, but when betting comes into play in arm wrestling, like Devin's going to be a guy where, he could be ranked 5 going against 1. And he'll probably... It's like that Conor McGregor effect in the same way, right? Yeah. Like when Conor McGregor was fighting Aldo, it's like, okay, you know what I mean? Like he ended up winning, of course, but he probably shouldn't have been the favorite there, which is funny. What about Sergey Kalnichenko and Jordan Sonev on the right arm?
Ooh, that's going to be an interesting one.
I am very interested for that one, actually.
Yeah... I think Sergey has the upper hand just through sheer experience and exposure to arm wrestling. I just think that, but it's going to be interesting. Like we might have a dark horse here.
Yeah, I'm leaning Jordan in this one for some reason. And this is really bad arm wrestling math, and I know a lot of factors come into play here. But I was in the building when Matt pulled Jordan and when Matt pulled Sergey, and Jordan just has something about him that I really enjoy watching him arm wrestle. And I like Sergey a lot too. He's great and he trains hard. But I'm leaning Jordan on this one for some reason. I'm really excited to see that one live, so it'll be good. What about Todd Hutchings and Oleg?
Ooh, this is gonna be a very spicy one. I'm leaning towards Toddzilla. I think the old guy still has a few tricks up his sleeve. I think he can actually win it.
Yeah, here it's funny to me. If this match would have happened before Dave and Todd pulled, I would have been like full force Todd. But since I watched Dave and Todd pull, I know Dave is freaky strong, but I'm still leaning Todd, but I'm like 60-40. That's where I'm at. So it'll be interesting. And then last one I just want to do quick. Let's do Matt Mask and is it David? Arabuli? Yeah.
Yeah. I would say Matt Mask hands down. I don't have any doubt in Matt.
Yeah,
I
I
think
don't
he'll do
either. I,
it.
it's funny because, well, you know this as well, but when you talk with Matt, you just talk with him. He's such a relaxed guy. And then the day of, he's a little more antsy. And then, like, 3 hours before, you look over, he's like this. He's like,
Yeah,
and then, like, 30 minutes before, he's got his headphones in. He's like, and then it's just, it's a completely different guy. It's so fun to watch.
yeah. First time I met him was like he was just so nice and chill, and I was like, I know you from your reels and videos. Like, you sure you're not some sort of like nicer twin brother or something?
Yeah, it's the same
It's
guy.
like, what?
Yeah.
No, he's absolutely the best. But yeah, he gets in that zone. Like, I love that about him because he can just switch on and get in the zone, and he's a completely different person. And yeah, well, he did with Irakli. I was there. I was
Wow.
like, Jesus, that I did not expect that. When he did it, I was like,
Yeah.
this
I
is
know.
fantastic.
Crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's exciting to see. And like you said, it's a switch, and that's one guy. Like if you want to talk about a mental aspect, he when the time comes mentally, he's always there. It's awesome to see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and one my last question I had for you. This might take a while to answer, but if you if someone new was getting into arm wrestling, we'll say arm wrestling first, and then I just want to talk about being maybe a general athlete. But we'll talk about arm wrestling first. If someone was becoming an arm wrestler, and you just had some bits of advice to give them or things to tell them, what are some things that you would say that would help them become better?
Well, first advice would be don't rush things because in arm wrestling, what I see is a lot of people try to rush things and they get injured because they put in a bit too much work on the tendons and ligaments and basically the structural integrity of the arm way too fast, and the body needs time to adapt. Muscles adapt a lot faster than tendons and ligaments, so they need a bit more time under that high tension to adapt, to become stronger, to adapt to this stressor. So for arm wrestling, yes, kind of like he's into it, and kind of like paradoxically, your best exposure here in the beginning is to table time, is to arm wrestle.
Yeah.
So get exposure, learn from people that know how to arm wrestle correctly. Because it's one thing to arm wrestle with somebody who knows what they're doing. And it's another thing to just go, and arm wrestle drunk at a bar
Yeah,
with some
yeah.
guy who just doesn't know. He's like he just pushes everything in it. It's kind of like somebody who knows exactly how much pressure to apply and can see like, yeah, he's not going to snap your bicep tendon. He's
Yeah.
just training you. That I think that is very important. And there's a lot of good people out there that have a lot of good information on how to train for arm wrestling. Like I know Coach Ray has a lot of good information out there, and gym training is also going to be an adjunct. Gym training is going to be non-specific. Let's say it does help train some underlying systems. You can use heavier isometrics to strengthen tendons and ligaments, of course, but it's not just doing bicep curls and forearm curls, because sometimes that bulk, that muscular bulk, will actually be detrimental. You see guys that have huge biceps, and like Morozov or even Leonidas, they can get so pumped because that's what bodybuilders do. They train for the pump,
Yeah.
which is exactly what athletes do not do. An athlete hates the pump while a bodybuilder loves the pump.
Yeah.
So don't train to get the pump in the gym. Train specifically for your sport. But yeah, you can train to get some muscle size and muscle strength, but also get that tendon strength, which a lot of people ignore. But I think that's that's crucial in arm wrestling. I think that the arm circumference, although it's kind of cool in one of the metrics on, the like kind of like information boards that come out when the athletes are presented, I think it's cool, but in the same breath, I don't think that matters as much as people actually think it does.
Yeah.
Like you have Devon that has pretty small arms compared to his opponents. You saw that with Alex Credecha, and he smoked him. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't even close. So size, especially arm size, doesn't matter that much in arm wrestling as it does in maybe other sports. But it's important that you strengthen your connective tissue, because that's probably going to be the biggest limiting factor, and that's what I see a lot of arm wrestlers do. That's the problem. They just have cranky elbows, cranky wrists, fingers, shoulders. That's usually it comes with territory, and it's something that should be addressed as soon as possible. So yeah, kind of like don't rush into it. Make sure that your gym training per se is specific to what you want to achieve and not just copied from a bodybuilder. And make sure you have ample table time with people that actually know what they're doing.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think those are all great. Yeah, staying injury free at the start is so important because it's tough to find that balance, right? Like, I know for me particularly, I would push so hard and then I would literally ache. But looking back, I'm glad I ached because if I didn't ache, I probably would have pushed harder to a point of injury. And I wrote this down earlier. I wanted to cover it before I jump in the second thing, but when we were talking about hard work, I forgot to bring this up. But hard work it's funny because you think of it and people think like, oh, I'm pushing as hard as I can in the gym and I'm maxing, things like that. But like we were talking about earlier, hard work can be taking a step back. That can be the hard work you have to put in. It can be, I need to rest today to be as good as I can be for tomorrow, but I feel like I'm going to be putting myself behind. To that person at that particular time, that's hard. And I think we can kind of correlate that to what you just said. It can be hard to not be arm wrestling to the point of an injury or to pushing yourself. But at that moment, take a look at it that way and think, this is the hard work right now. The hard work is doing less work.
Yeah. And it's not just in training. Hard work is getting your cardio in. It sucks. It's boring. Nobody likes it. But you have to do it because you have to be cardiovascularly fit. Being cardiovascularly fit, having a base aerobic fitness not only improves blood markers like your lipid profile, like your red blood cell count, lowers your blood pressure, but it also improves capitalization, which drives blood flow to the muscle, which helps clear waste products from the muscle, which makes you recover faster so you can train more. You recover faster. You're not heaving after a 1 hour pull session.
Yeah.
You're actually like, oh, I can do this again. So sometimes, the hard work is doing your cardio, eating clean, cooking your meals, hydrating properly. You would be surprised how many people don't understand what hydration is. Like, oh, I have like I have like a 12-ounce glass of water and a White Monster sometime a day. Like that's not hydration. Like that is nothing. That is you definitely need to up your hydration. You need to be. Most people should probably be drinking around a gallon a day. If you're a male of decent body weight and size, you should probably be drinking a gallon a day.
Wow.
Without having to do strenuous work. If you're sweating a lot, probably closer to 50% to 100% more than that.
Wow. Yeah. And then the other side of that question is, I'm just going to make it very basic, but if you want to be bigger, if you want to be stronger, you want to be a little faster, what would you recommend to someone who's just trying to up their base general athletics?
Oh, bigger, stronger, faster. That was actually a documentary, so kind of a self-explanatory.
Oh, it was. Okay.
Yeah, no, I'm just kidding. It actually is a documentary. It was very interesting. But the whole idea, bigger, stronger, faster. The first thing you need to do is define your goal and find out what will help you achieve that goal.
Yeah.
Bigger, stronger, faster has become like a catchphrase. If you want to be bigger, just that blanket statement, you want to be bigger as a bodybuilder. Eat in a caloric surplus, lift weights, try to maintain leanness. If you want to be faster, that is very specific, improve your VO2 max. That is also an endurance metric, but, improve sprint times, and there's sprint specific training. But basically, what you want to do is start somewhere.
Yeah.
Find out what you want to do and start somewhere. I generally, my idea was like, I don't want to be fat and I want to have abs and I also want to have biceps. So my start was like, I need to get my fat ass to the gym, and that's what I did. And for well over 16 years, I have not stopped.
Good for you, man. That's awesome. Okay, well, I got you here and you got me questions, so I got to ask another question. But
Sure.
let's talk endurance. You talk about VO2 maxes, things like that. For someone who is just wanting to have a better overall cardiovascular system, have endurance, like you said, they could pull for an hour and not feel tired. Does that come from jogging? Does that come from sprinting? Does that come from just walking? Like, what is the best for that kind of thing?
That is a fantastic question. I love it. People say cardio now, and they just use it as an umbrella for everything that they do. First off, steps are not cardio. Movement is ambulation. That just means that you're not a potted plant. You're an actual living creature that can move. So steps don't count. What I would quantify as being aerobic work, cardiovascular work of the aerobic nature, is anything that would get your heart rate into that 60 to 70% of the max heart rate, which is 220 minus your 8.
Was that your second zone?
Yeah, kind of like zone 2.
Yeah.
To oversimplify, for most individuals, anywhere between 125 and 140 BPM.
Okay.
The modality doesn't really matter as much. Whether it's a jog, going on a treadmill, walking on a steep incline, the Stairmaster elliptical, bike, anything you want. As long as you can get your heart rate between 125 and 140 BPM, you are in that aerobic zone and you are conditioning your aerobic system, which is basically your endurance component. That will help you be more endurant. That will lower your cholesterol, lower your red blood cells, etc., etc. Now, when you're moving into the anaerobic glycolytic system, which is your kind of like HIIT training, high intensity interval training, that is something that you can sustain for more than 30 to 60 if you're really conditioned 90 seconds. I would say 60 would be the cap. So that will be your kind of like, you get on your assault bike or air bike, whatever you want to call it, and you do 30 seconds on, 1 minute off, 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, or 1 minute on, 1 minute off, and you do that for 5 bouts with 5 rest intervals, 5 minutes with 10 minutes rest, kind of like that. Or you can get into kind of like very specific things, like you're mimicking. If you're a boxer, you have 5-minute rounds, you can mimic that. You can literally get on a bike and to go ham for 5 minutes. Yeah. Because you're mimicking the time that you have around. Yeah. So things like that. If you want to condition yourself for explosive bouts, which most sports are, because you think of something like, let's say, rugby, as it has an endurance component, yes, but there's multiple small sprints with longer rest periods. So that's somewhere where this kind of like interval training would apply more. Even for arm wrestling, you need to have your base physical fitness, your base cardiovascular endurance. So you will spend 50 to 80% of your cardio on doing that low intensity steady state, 125 to 140 BPM, and then you spend that other 50 to 20%, 20 to 50% on doing that HIIT. Because how long does a match last? How long does each round last? You have kind of like that HIIT component. It could be 30 seconds. It could be, what was Jerry's record? 10 minutes, I think. Yeah. Yeah. So, unless you're Jerry Cadrat, who By the way, I don't think he does any cardio, which he should do. You should probably train for like 1 minute intervals with about specifically 1 minute 90 seconds rest, which is kind of like what you get in a match.
Yeah. Well, no, it's funny you said that because actually I made a little bit of a video talking about this. I forget when, but I talked about, so I did that 60 to 70%. For me, I kept my heart rate around, like, I think it was like 136 beats per minute is what I came to. And I would do that for an hour a day. And then on top of that, I was doing assault bike or I was rowing. But I would do, because we got a minute rest in my last match that I had. So I did 30 to 40 seconds, kind of depending on where I was, of like high intensity on the bike. And then I would stop for a minute just to kind of emulate the rest. And I was doing 7 rounds just because it was a 5-round match. But I'm really glad with what you just said because I kind of reassured that I should keep doing that in a sense. So
absolutely, no, that's actually perfect. That's more or less what I would recommend somebody do. Probably 30 minutes a couple of times a week of that low intensity cardio. 136 BPM for somebody your age, your body weight, your physical fitness is perfect, and then do a couple of rounds on a rower or assault bike with that kind of like 30 to 60 seconds on, 60 seconds off. That is absolutely perfect.
No, awesome. Well, yeah, I mean, that was a great talk. Thank you so much for coming on. It's awesome to have guests like you on. It's been so much fun. I feel like I could sit here and talk to you forever, so we should we'll have to reschedule something in the future when you got some time. I know you're a busy guy,
Absolutely.
but again, where can people find you? So Instagram is built and then a 4, the number
Yes.
4, Mayhem.
Mayhem.
And then you said there's an email in there if people want to reach out.
Yeah, there's a email or message something button that if
Yep.
people want to contact me or DM the page directly. I'm usually there. That's the easiest way to find me and everybody that's involved in Project Mayhem. And yeah, that's where I'm at. And thank you for having me. This was an awesome talk. I really loved it. And yeah, I'll see you in a couple of days in Vienna.
Yeah, I'm excited. It'll be a good time. But yeah, make sure you go follow him on Instagram, guys. I really like the message that he's sending and everything. There's a lot of good information. You post quite frequently a lot of really good information on there. And so I highly recommend anyone that is into athletics would check that out. But yeah, guys, that's all I got for today. So if you enjoyed this, make sure you like and subscribe. And don't forget to go check them out. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Perfect.